going to begin our multi-week journey talking about our 10th essential insight, which is healing through forgiveness, which is
We're going to do it a little different tonight.
what? You can't do that.
No, see, I got to keep you on your toes. So I want to invite you to stay here. I want you to bring Herb and I want you to bring Thom in the room with me. What we're going to do tonight.
Really, Thom?
Yeah, Thom too. What we're going to do tonight is we're going back.
Me?
Yeah, you. We're
Okay.
going to go. What we're doing is we're going to do a retrospective for a minute. We're going to go back through all of the insights that have led us to this 10th insight. And I'm going to describe that insight and what it is and say a few things about it and let Thom and Herb and you comment on it. And we'll go through all 9 of them. And then next week I will start on number 10.
So this is a pop test.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I did
See
it.
if I was paying attention all this time, right?
Notes. Oh, my God. Where's the notes from number 1?
Yeah, if you could see my desk, you would.
You're not refined notes. And my voice, part of the reason I'm doing this, I don't think I'd make it through the whole thing if I didn't have your support, you guys. So I appreciate you're helping me out with this. So why I want to do this is because there's a certain process that gets going. If you were with us when we went through the therapeutic value of the 12 steps, how the 12 steps help create both emotional sobriety and a healthy self-esteem, you see that the process moves us from one step, moves us to the next step, to the next step. And that there's an incredible, momentum that develops in our life that starts to carry us forward in a very, very powerful way. So I just want to capture the spirit of that tonight so that we can recap it and then talk about, forgiveness, which is this next insight. So let's look at number 1, right? It's waking up, right? Waking up from our sleepwalking. Well, it's such an important thing for us to start to have an awareness that there's more going on here than I've considered before. We talk about the alarm going off. Gurdjieff talks about an alarm, right? Gurdjieff is the one that said we're all asleep dreaming that we're awake. But we also talks about that, and every one of us has an alarm clock go off in our life. The problem is most of us hit snooze and we keep going back to sleep. We don't answer the alarm. But what starts to happen is that we reach a place in our life where we can't hit snooze anymore. And that's the gift of pain. That's the gift of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. The gift of doing the same thing and somehow hoping beyond belief that things can be different and having no idea how to create that difference. Now, what wakes up? See, that becomes such an important issue. What wakes up? Well, if you've heard us discuss this before, what is waking up is our desire to be what we can really be. But I'm going to say it a little differently tonight. I think the most important thing that wakes up in us is an interest and a curiosity in ourselves in a way that we have never had before. That we become interested in ourselves and in our lives, and we become curious to what's going on here. What haven't I seen all these years? What have I been missing? And we don't do it out of a, self-condemnation. We don't do it out of putting ourselves down and criticizing ourselves. We do it out of a sense of awe and wonderment. Oh my goodness, there's so much more here. There's a treasure to be discovered that I may have known something about, but I couldn't even believe existed. this is what moves us from insight to insight, from step to step, is this interest and curiosity in ourselves, an interest that there is another possibility, an interest in discovering a new possibility, and a curiosity about what that might mean for us in our life, in our relationship to life itself, and our relationship with others. So now I'll turn it over to my fellows for their comments.
Well, let me just pick up with curiosity, because it's one of my favorite things. And what occurs to me as you're saying that is I'm thinking actually of a client conversation I had today. It's interesting to me that I think curiosity is a very natural part of our nature. It's part of but curiosity toward ourselves is a new thing for lots of us, and one of the reasons for that, I believe, is because we've been so well trained in self-judgment. And so, why do I want to look closer at something that I'm used to either feeling judged by the outside, or I have that should monster judging me on the inside? And so, one of the things that I noticed, I was noticing this with this client, is that once you get into this program and you get over the surprise that nobody's going to judge you. We could tell you that, but it's like, it's for a lot of people, it's still kind of a surprise, that we're still waiting for that other shoe to drop. And you realize, I'm safe. I'm safe here. There's people that people will tell me what they really believe and what they think, but they're not going to judge me. And I really do think curiosity very naturally develops at that point. And what I think you do with your chapter is you pick that up and just start very, very consistently just nudging you to take that curiosity, and I love it being on the front end, because we're going to take the curiosity through all of these insights, all the chapters. So that's what I got.
An interesting thing, Thom, as you say that, it's interesting how that curiosity is really discouraged early on in life.
Oh God, yes.
Just think about it. Hey, why are you touching yourself? Quit touching yourself like that. What are you doing down there? That's not appropriate. Even from when we start to explore our bodies and our sexuality, it's discouraged. But it's discouraged across the board, because the society is so much into conforming.
Mm-hmm.
To you being, you to being a sheep.
Yeah, you don't have to be curious, because we'll give you the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have, speaking of clients, I have another client right now that's an extreme example of that, where she's able to point out that she got no experience whatsoever making decisions as a child, because her parents made all the decisions for her.
Yeah.
Good intentions, wanted her to be safe, but it's like she's a novice when it comes to making decisions in her own life. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, at a certain point, it went from I don't want to wake up because I'm afraid of what I'm going to find, right? To having to wake up because it was leaking out anyway, right? The behaviors, the dissatisfaction with living, it was all coming out anyway, sideways. So the exploration became a have to, and then the excitement as it got better. I got better and wanted to figure out more of this stuff. And I shared tonight on the earlier small study group about the book I discovered around 12 years in or so, right around the time I heard one of your recordings, Alan, on emotional sobriety, which is The Human Condition by Father Thomas Keating. And so much parallel stuff between the emotional sobriety and recovery. And it was like, wow, this explains a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And can I start to unravel that, and what, what's next, like that's, that's the joy of this, is, going from I have to I want to.
Yep.
Herb?
My name is Herb and I'm an alcoholic. And thank you, Alan, for the surprise. I immediately went to your book, which I have here, and I looked at the table of contents as you were speaking. And yeah, exactly.
Exactly what I have heard.
Exactly. And I kind of like went through it and I said, so how do I relate to the natural progression that was in your head or in your heart or soul as you were writing this? And to answer this very question that you have, and of course, my frame of reference is always the steps. So that's my go-to default explanation of at least my reality. And you talked about some time ago organismic life force, and you hold up an acorn and an oak tree to visually say, what's that? The acorn becomes an oak tree. What is that?
How
And
does that?
and that's the spirit that you're talking about. That's the curiosity that's built into the structure.
Yeah.
All right. It's indomitable. It cannot be suppressed. It's what Carl Jung called that existential thirst or hunger that we have for spirit, and we get distracted by spirits. All that's a prelude to chapter 1, suffering. That's the condition of humanity. And steps 1 through 9 takes care of that. And we enter the world of the spirit, chapter 2, about emotional sobriety. We enter the world of the spirit, steps 10, 11, and 12, chapter 3. Chapter 4, staying awake, vigilance. He says, watch for the 4 horsemen of the step 4, resentment and fear and dishonesty and selfishness, when they crop up. And then, of course, in his treatise on emotional sobriety, the 12 and 12 in chapter 10, he says, it's a spiritual axiom. Whenever we're disturbed, there's something wrong with us. We have awakened to the fact that when I'm disturbed, it's me. It's not outside of me. It's always me. It's always me. It's never them. Chapter 5, I'm not a victim. Chapter 6, reality is not personal. Chapter 7, I am responsible. Chapter 8, reality just is. Chapter 9, principles are reality. Chapter 10, consciousness is the solution. Chapter 11, I'm a human being.
Yeah.
Humility is the attitude that accepts the fact of my humanity, that I'm not perfect, that I will make mistakes, and I have the ability to course correct and become a better person. Chapter 12, we're looking forward to forgiveness, which my definition is release, to release me and to release them. And then in that process to be released, freedom as the goal. Just some thoughts.
Show off.
There goes my perfectionism.
I lose tonight. Okay, I got it. Well played, Herb.
Look, you showed a process, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There's a whole process that takes place.
Mhm.
And that's what you just captured. And does it parallel in some way the steps? And of course it does.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about in many of the workshops we do when we talk about the therapeutic value of the 12 steps, that there is a very sound spiritual and psychological infrastructure and process that goes on in these steps that really can be seen and discovered and identified in a lot of other approaches to therapy. It follows the arc of good therapy. We've
Well,
talked.
because it's really about the human nature and the human being and the human development. And the words may differ. The dynamic may even differ, the explanation, but the reality is absolutely the same.
Yeah.
So we get curious, right? We start to wake up. Now, this is the power. See, what happens in one step is it develops a charge. And what we're talking about tonight is the charge that happens when we wake up is this, Herb called it a thirst for more understanding of our experience and our life and what it means and how to show up in it. That's the part of us that gets awakened. Now, the first manifestation of that is to realize that we haven't been living consciously. And as we start to turn that dimmer switch up, and I've always loved the analogy, because it's not an on and off switch.
Right.
Some people experience an on and off switch, not many people. Even the on and off switch people experience a dimmer switch after that. There's no doubt about it, but it's a dimmer switch. We start to put the lights on. We start to see things that we didn't see before. Our curiosity is like a lantern that we start to shine in those dark places in our consciousness. And a lantern we take into the attic and we start looking around. Hey, what's up here that I haven't looked at, right? And it's such a powerful thing as we wake up, this light starts to fill our hearts and our souls and our minds. And that becomes the first resolution, or in some way, a sort of a satisfaction of that initial curiosity. Wow, I am made of awareness. And I have shut my awareness down. Herb and I talked about one time how we believe that you could think of God as awareness.
Right.
It's a very interesting meditation if you take that into meditation. But we are an aware being. We are the only being that, like a cat, doesn't sit around saying, God damn, I wish I was a Doberman Pinscher. You know, if I was a Doberman Pinscher, my life could be so much better. No, it just hangs out being a cat. You know, a little doxy is a doxy. You know, a rock doesn't want to be a tree. Tree doesn't want to be a shrub. They just are what they are. But our consciousness and our awareness creates a very different experience in life. And that's why a lot of us don't want to have a lot of awareness, because of what we'll become aware of.
That's right.
It's easier to go through life as an automaton and just do those things, those routines and those things in front of us, and follow a script and all those other things. It binds a lot of anxiety.
Well,
But
that hooks back to what I was saying, that basically we're so used to judgment at various levels that it's like the curiosity is deadened. It's like we don't, especially when we're pointing the camera back at ourselves. It's like, you know, I don't want to, you know, find out this. It's like, this is going to be this. I mean, if I'm curious, it's like no, I'm not curious. I don't want to know. That's the way I would think about it. So,
you know, you're right, because we're desensitized, aren't we, Thom? We are totally desensitized to ourselves. And what is starting to happen as we turn the dimmer switch up, we start to get sensitized to our experience.
Yeah.
We start to include our experience. And the only way to do that is to live consciously. And that becomes such an important foundation in order to do the work for emotional sobriety, because that sensitization to our experience is what's going to help us become aware of the things that we need to become aware of to develop what Herb called the freedom and
It's
to find
the feedback loop.
And the balance.
balance.
If I'm aware that I'm out of balance, then I can be back in balance. But if I'm not aware, then I just live suffering out of balance, and I blame whoever's available.
And this is where the courage comes in, right? To be able to start to peel back the layers and expose myself to others, and allow them to feed back to me what they're seeing, right? So I can continue to be in that asleep state, and even with some suffering, right? But as soon as I start to go, here's my fourth step, or this is what I'm thinking, or and holding still to get that feedback and consciously hear what's going on, then I could start to look inside without that harsh judgment.
You know,
What do you call Herb, the enlightened witness? Is that yours?
I talk about that. That was from,
That's not my term,
yeah, that's a term.
I mean, I love the term, but it's not
Yeah.
mine.
yeah. I heard it first from Alice Miller.
That's where I got the term from, Alice Miller, that
Yeah,
we need
yeah.
like witness in our life.
Yeah.
And that
Mhm.
especially somebody who's abused needs that to validate their experience, that it's not about them.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
now that our dimmer switch goes up, our curiosity now starts to turn the dimmer switch on. What do we become aware of? And in emotional sobriety, it's very interesting. I'll say this in a better way. It's very important and interesting that we discern our habitual ways of thinking, that we discern our habitual ways of feeling, and that we discern our habitual ways of showing up in relationships and identifying the patterns to our behavior in relationships, especially when things don't go our way.
Right.
And this is what happens in the third insight, is discerning our emotional dependence. And as Joan so well stated it was like an unbelievable revelation to her to see the extent and to see the pervasiveness of her emotional dependency in her life and the impact it had. And that's what all of us, that's an awareness and a kind of an aha moment that any of us that takes this work seriously, like what Herb said, if you take every disturbance you have and you unpack it, it will not take long for you to see how your emotional dependence is showing up in your life. It is at the root of all of our disturbances. So that's
right. It's not if, it's what. It's not if I have a unrealistic expectation. It's like what unrealistic expectations do I have? Yeah.
Yeah, and I never thought my expectations were unrealistic. I thought yours were, but mine they were legit. Yours were, questionable at the least.
Mine were good. Yeah, they were all good.
Yeah, I had had an experience where this was about 5-7 years in, and I had gone through some treatment at Karen Foundation. They used to have the week-long codependency treatment. And I started to see how I was clinging to people and seeking people who weren't reciprocating, right? It was like, wait, it's there again, right? I started to see like how I would not get calls back, and I would seek people stronger or harder and like, where's that coming from, right? Like, it's not this person because they're like the 10th person that I've just done this to, right? Trying to, hold someone hostage in a relationship. So it started that like recognition of the dependence, and then, go the next level deeper and see where it's repeating itself, and okay, then what's the source of that? That's really where it started showing up for me.
Yep.
So here we are, it's 10:40 and we've done 3. We'll do one more and then we'll open up for a few minutes.
Well, Herb did all of them.
I know, but we're still gonna go through. He aced the exam, so he doesn't have to show up next week.
He's just auditing the class.
That's right. Yeah. But you know, one of those guys that gets 1,600 on his SAT or something.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
hate those guys. So number 4 is now as we start to discern our emotional dependency, right? Now we start to see the pervasiveness of it. It's omnipresent in our life, right? We start to become aware of this thing that was so obvious that we couldn't see. That's one of the things I loved about Gestalt therapy. It's described as the therapy of the obvious, but we don't see the obvious in our lives. The obvious in our lives is not easy to see at all. It's obvious to someone else that may be our enlightened witness, but it's not obvious to us. And so we start to ask ourselves, the curiosity now comes forward again. Wow, look at this. It's pervasive in my life. What is it doing? How is it manifesting itself? And the first thing that comes to the foreground when we ask that question is that we start to see that we take everything personally. We make everything about us. And that becomes such an important dimension as we get into talking about forgiveness. You know, Fred Lushkin, who Herb's is I think a workshop is coming up with Fred and Herb again. One of the things that he saw, and he didn't even realize it, but that he even plugged in was this dynamic about we take everything personally. Because one of the things he does to help people get to a place of forgiveness is help them realize that whatever the act was that created their grievance was not personal. That becomes such an important thing. He calls it their unenforceable rules. Because our unenforceable rules are about making things all about us. And so we start to become aware of how much we take things personal in our lives. And when we do, we start to realize that we don't see other people as they are. We see other people through our projections of what we want them to be or what we fear they're not going to be able to be. And so, of course, our relationships, are diminished. Of course, there's a lot of dissatisfaction. There's a lot of lack of intimacy and connection, and there's so much misunderstanding. You cannot have a true connection with another person when you make everything about you.
And make it.
Keep going, Alan. If I have something to say, I'll say it. So you get
okay.
through this.
I was gonna say, I get it. It's about me, which leads me to take everything so seriously, right? And everything's affects me so deeply, and I'm my paper thin, nerves, right? If I'm that deep in self in the bad way, like everything's life or death, and everything's a threat to my security and my self-esteem, and I'm not fun to be around. I had my wife tell me, you have no sense of humor. Like, I don't know where it went, but you've lost your sense of humor.
Well, and this is where then our demand for the possession of control of the people and conditions surrounding me comes from. Bill describes it that way. Our demand for the possession of control of those people and conditions around us. Because if I make everything about me, and if I'm so dependent on what people are doing to be okay and to have my existence, as I tied into earlier today, then I've got to control and manipulate everything. The threat is too great. There's too much at stake if it doesn't go my way. Bill calls it an impossible way of life. An impossible way of life, and oh my goodness, it is. It is such an impossible way of life. We step
and all that control it's the opposite of curiosity.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate, and we don't understand why.
We just fill it in so we don't, because we're scared of the blank space until we're not, until we get to where we can be curious and open.